Welcome to the program. My name is Erik.
And I'm Ryan, and this is Subtitles On.
This is a podcast all about different media content that we enjoy, whether it be movies, television shows, books, music, video games, anything of the like, any sort of content that you consume. And today we will be discussing mine and Ryan's top 5 albums of all time, right? Are we doing all time?
All time. As
Time.
hard as that is, yes.
It's very, very hard. I don't know why I decided to do this and give myself so many gray hairs. But I don't know about you, but I kind of took the approach of these are like really important to me specifically and my tastes. And I wasn't really focusing on like, oh, this is like a really important album. Like this started so many things. Like it's just basically raw, like my enjoyment of the music is basically what compiled my list for me. Is that similar to how you viewed it?
Absolutely, yeah. Because if we were to try to go by what's really big and important to pop culture and music history and all that kind of stuff, it's gonna be a lot of stuff that I know I'm not gonna like. So I definitely want to go with what's just important to me for sure.
Right. Exactly. All right. Sounds like we're on the same page. First of all, cheers.
Cheers to you, sir. What are you drinking today?
I am drinking Shorts Brew. That's the name of the brewery here in Michigan. The brew is called Super Fluid. It's a double American India Pale Ale. And then the slogan for it is clean water makes better beer. To be honest, this beer's good, but it does taste like a mouthful of dandelions.
Okay, and you know that dandelions taste like that how?
I'd rather not say. Not go down that road.
Not again, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Already happened twice today. All right. So, do you said you have some theories about what's on my list? Like, I'm anxious to hear what you think.
All right. So
some of my top 5 favorite albums.
So I'm gonna list them off, but I don't want any response from you.
Right. Right, exactly.
Right now, it's difficult because we're Skyping, so you'd have to put on your best poker face, so that I'm not nothing's given away, because I really kind of want to be surprised by this whole thing. So I'm gonna list them off, and then you can list mine off. So, all right, and this is in no particular order. This is just kind of as they came to my head. So,
okay.
First I have August Burns Red, Constellations. The Decemberists, The Crane Wife. Richard Dawson's Peasant. Brand New's Deja, Entendu. And Death Cab for Cutie's Narrow Stairs.
All right, that's adequate list. I like that. I did not prepare a list of guesses, but I'm going to be a good sport. I am going to at least guess Angra. It's called Shadow Temple. Is that the name of the album?
The one you're thinking of is you're combining two. It's the album you're thinking of is Temple of Shadows.
Temple of Shadows. That's right. That's the name of the song in it. There's a title track in that album, right?
Not quite. There's a song called The Temple of Hate, and then there's The Shadow Hunter.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then I'm also going to guess Kalmah, Seventh Symphony for you. And you know what? I'm also going to guess Death Cab's Narrow Stairs for you. See if that one's on there. Just because I would be so upset if I didn't throw that guess out and it ended up being on your list. I don't know, man. You have such a wide taste in music that I couldn't even begin to throw out any more guesses. So I'm just going to let us start rolling and see who's right.
Okay, that sounds great. Right. Do you want to do like an alternating, like you do one, I do one, back and forth kind of thing?
Yes, but I would like you to go first.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. Excellent. So I haven't ranked these in any particular order because ranking them like favorite to fifth favorite isn't possible.
Really?
It's too much like apples to oranges. So I'm going to choose to go by alphabetical order based on band name.
Okay.
So
a different approach for me because I actually ranked them from 5 to 1.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is good. Okay. So anyway, the first one in terms of alphabet is Agalloch's The Mantle.
God damn it! I should have known. That didn't even cross my mind. Oh, okay.
That I've probably listened to that album more than any other album ever. It's for people who aren't familiar, they're a kind of atmospheric black metal band with a lot of eclectic influences like doom metal, neo folk, and a lot of post rock as well. Specifically in this album, that's what I love about this album so much. It was their second album, and it was released in 2002. And it's just, I love it so much because it's just beautiful. The melodies and the structures are just so well crafted and well composed. And I find that with a lot of these kinds of bands who have lots of influences, there tend to be a lot of just kind of jarring breaks in the styles of music, and it's like it'll go from one to the other at the drop of a hat. With them, though, they just seamlessly can blend everything together so well, and it just flows. And it has almost kind of a cinematic quality to it. And I've always thought that it would be so cool if they had scored a film. They're not a band anymore, but like taking a movie like The Grey or The Revenant and have Agalloch kind of create the score and the tone for that, I think would sound incredible.
Yeah, especially, and I like how you brought up those two films because that is exactly right. That's exactly the type of tone that album holds. Is like very bleak. It has to be in the winter, and it has to be like really rough for the protagonist. Like nothing's going right because that would kind of be perfect. Like
exactly, yeah. And they tend to use a lot with their guitar work. They use a lot of cool effects, and because that's kind of the post rock influence. You got kind of the weird atypical guitar sounds in that, and kind of some kind of dissonance in there here, used occasionally, which can cause some good tension, just like a good set of strings can in a traditional composition. I think it could be really effective. So anyway, so that would be kind of the main reasons why this is one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, exactly. I'm kicking myself not trying to guess that one. Of course,
that's okay.
At least I didn't lose a prize. That's
okay. You were on the spot. You didn't have a list prepared, so it's all good. I sprung this on you last minute, so no problem.
No worries. Yeah, and like everybody who hears like black metal, like if you're not a metal listener, you know that term can kind of like really turn you off of it. But the Mantle is actually quite accessible for people who aren't really used to growls or something. If they don't like that if I remember correctly, the Mantle doesn't have any or very little like actual growling in it, right?
It's there's a decent amount of harsh vocal, but it's not like a full growl or a scream. It's more of like a rasp, kind of a raspy sound. So it's like black metal light, sort of.
Yeah. There's not a lot of distortion in the album, is there?
No, it's pretty clean. It's they kind of are going for that kind of spacious kind of like forest grove atmosphere, like with the production. So it's kind of cold sounding, and so there isn't a lot of distortion unless they're doing using the EBow. They use the EBow quite a bit in some of the songs to kind of stretch out those notes and everything. And it's pretty cool sounding.
Yeah, I remember liking it, but I can't remember too much about it like offhand because I don't listen to it that often. But I do remember an interesting bit of trivia is the album artwork is actually a picture of a deer statue that is found in Portland, Oregon.
Yes, right? That was I do remember. It took me a long time to understand that that's what it was, and it wasn't just a black and white photo of an actual elk or deer or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So, elk. I think is what it is. I said deer, but I stand corrected.
Yeah. Well, one other interesting thing about this album was the fact that one of like the highlights of our road trip together about a year and a half ago was when we were driving through, kind of the forested valleys of California, and we had this album playing, and just that atmosphere was just perfect. It was so good.
Yeah, it was when we were coming up the mountain pass roads, going past Yosemite and Death Valley. That area. It was very, very neat, like seeing all of those picturesque panoramic views of the mountains, and it was very great.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember that too. Very fond memory. Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else to add on the Mantle?
I think that's the main stuff. So let's hear your, I guess, number 5.
My number 5. All right. So actually, my number 5 changed this morning. Like I did have something else, but that one got bumped for my number 5, which is Menomena's Mines.
I should have remembered Menomena as one of your favorite bands.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I had trouble, deciding which Menomena album to actually do. It was between Muscle and Flow or Mines, and I landed on Mines because as a cohesive album, this one is probably the most polished, and it definitely showcases more of the drummer's vocals in some of the better songs, which is very unlike me to like, because he's kind of like a baritone, and I tend to enjoy more like tenors singing. But Menomena is made up of a trio of musicians. There's Justin, can't remember his last name. I didn't prepare and write notes. He plays bass and the baritone saxophone. There's Brent Knopf, Knopf. That would be a nightmare if you were playing Hangman. And I want to say Danny or Daniel is the drummer, and they each like take turns singing. So any given song in any of one of their albums, you'll hear a different vocalist, and they're very quite different. Their mix and sound together is very great in a very cohesive way. I find them very, very entertaining, and they do very unconventional type of music writing, where they'll each write their own songs, and then they'll come to the band, and then they'll add on layers and layers and layers onto each other's songs. But yeah, I really enjoy this album. There are plenty of great songs on it. I think of my favorites, probably Dirty Cartoons, Tithe, and Five Little Rooms are my favorite, which are incidentally all sang by the drummer, which I listened to all 5 of the albums today in preparation, and I was air drumming to what he was actually like doing, and I was like, how is he singing this at the exact same time? I would be like,
I've always wondered that when you have a drummer who's singing, who's singing a melody but keeping a rhythm, that just blows my mind.
Right. And I can imagine that they probably track the vocals in a different time as they're tracking the drums when they're in the studio. But having seen them live twice, they play every song like it's on the record. Like, it sounds so true to like what I'm used to that it's really impressive. Their quality on stage is unsurpassable.
I can second that, because I was at one of those shows with you. I remember we were at I believe it was Numos in Seattle, and
Numos in Seattle.
It was a really good show.
It was. That was
really
the Barsuk Records anniversary like show that they were doing, and Menomena was headlining, I believe.
Yeah, that does sound right. And you could really tell like all the influences really coming to bear with their music and those live shows, because it's just. I'd heard a little bit of their stuff before, because you introduced me to them and whatnot ahead of time, but seeing it live, like if you just hadn't ever heard them before, you would have thought that they were doing covers from a bunch of different bands, because it's very diverse, but still kind of has a sound that's like, oh, this is them. So
right.
That's a hard thing for bands to achieve, I would imagine, So
yeah. They really have a good presence on stage as well. It was only a big shame, because that time that was after Brent had left the band to pursue his side project.
Ramona Falls, correct?
Ramona Falls.
Got
That's
it.
right. Good job.
Thank you.
Trained you well.
Yes, you did.
All right. Number 4. What is it? What do you got?
Okay. Well,
I guess alphabetical number 4.
Yeah, I'm very left. I'm a very kind of left-minded person, so it's very just organized.
Someone didn't read the syllabus.
No, apparently, yeah, that's right. Okay, so you called this one Angra's Temple of Shadows. They were one of the first power metal bands I ever discovered, because in high school I listened to a lot of metalcore, and when I look back at that now, it's a lot of really terrible metalcore. But my roommate in college, he introduced me to power metal, and Angra was one of the first bands I heard, and they're just amazing. And no other power metal band does it as well as they do. So I kind of heard the best first, which is good, but also not good. And Temple of Shadows is just like them at their peak, because they've had a long career. They're still a band, and they've had a lot of lineup changes and whatnot. But this is kind of mid-career. It was their fifth album. It came out in 2004, and it was just like the peak of their songwriting and their incorporating of influence in their music. They're from Brazil, so they incorporate a lot of really cool regional kind of Brazilian elements with the various rhythms with percussion, classical guitar. The Shadow Hunter, which is one of the songs you were kind of mentioning, starts with like about almost a full minute of just classical guitar, all plucking, no strumming, just all plucking, and it's just absolutely incredible. And they do it so well because power metal in the metal community is known for being really cheesy.
Right.
And all too often you get a band, they write some boring riffs and make them sound epic, and then to just push that epicness over the edge, they end up taking some strings or something and just layering that on there and saying, "Oh, this is good enough." Well,
right.
With
Well,
Angra, with
distracting everybody with their satin pants and huge bulges.
Exactly.
Don't listen to my music. Look at this.
exactly. Look how pretty our singer is.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys, actually, you could tell that a lot of thought went into the writing of all the orchestral parts, which are actual orchestras. They're not just keyboards, to really work with all the actual metal elements, and it's just flawless from start to finish. And what are the notes that I have? The other thing about them too is they're a very technical band. Power metal is usually pretty simple. I'm not a musician, so I couldn't play any of it. But in terms of actual like metal music, it's very simple. But their guitar work and their drumming and their bass work is just crazy technical without sacrificing melody. They still get a ton of melody in there. It's accessible and it's beautiful. I've always liked that album, and it's one that I still come back to from time to time, just because it's just so good. So
yeah, one of my fondest memories of us at the beginning of our friendship is listening to that album and air guitaring and drumming in my kitchen and my living room of my basement apartment. It was right. So much fun, and we just did not care like at all. It was
the two of the fast.
I felt no self-conscious whatsoever. Like it was great.
It was fantastic. I remember the songs. Both were from this album. It was "Spread Your Fire" and "Temple of Hate," which are two of the fastest songs. And I was getting tired air drumming. I can't imagine the actual drummer. I've seen their Achilles Priester, their drummer at the time. He does some YouTube videos on his channel of him playing some of those songs from that album, and it just blows my mind how somebody can do even one song of that without just falling down and just taking a nap. So,
right.
Yeah.
I burned all the calories I consumed this morning.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, So how about
nice number 4? Yeah. However you put that one, I guess.
It was the second in my mind, A.
Yeah.
Second A.
In my mind, these are ranked. So.
Well,
you done messed up.
Well, I will say that those were the first two that came to mind.
Okay.
That counts for anything. So yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah.
All right.
So anyway, your number 4?
My number 4, the Decemberists, Picaresque.
Okay.
Not the Crane Wife. Picaresque.
I was sitting there looking at those two albums, looking at the tracks, and I'm thinking, he loves both albums. I know that. We listened to both of them on the road trip. He's talked about them both and all this. But for some reason, the Crane Wife stuck out as just the one that seemed to be the one that clicked as a whole more.
Right.
But, okay. Anyway, sorry.
So you felt the need. You'll feel the need only to try to guess one, though. Is that what you wanted to do?
Well, yeah. I
could have said this one or that one. But
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
A little bit of cheating. Yeah, Picaresque is such a great concept album. I would consider it a concept album because it's such central. The storytelling is such a central theme of I guess the Decemberists in general, but this one has such rich stories, and almost every single one is completely lachrymose. Like it's just a whole bunch of people not enjoying themselves and having like a really bad time. It's just horrible things happening to good people, ostensibly good people, right? Save for the opening track, Infanta, which is this spectacle of this grand parade that's happening for this infant child. And the way that whole track like comes together, I can picture it happening because the music tells the story that the lyrics are telling as well. Like they are such a complement of each other. And this is something that Colin Meloy does perfectly, is he is able to write music that complements the lyrics perfectly. For example, like later in the album, the Mariner's Revenge song is, I think, one of the greatest musical compositions I've ever heard. It's definitely on my top 5 favorite songs of all time. It is such a great story about a boy whose mother is mistreated by a man who leaves, and after she dies, he promises her on her deathbed to pursue the man, find him, and basically torture and kill him because of what he did. And so that is what he sets out to do. And there's this great like interlude that happens when he gets on the boat. And it's just basically like old maritime, like swaying back and forth, like do 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 do. And it's just, I was like, wow, he's sailing on the waves right now. Like this is perfect. As well as at the very end of the song, when we keep hearing this chorus, which is the lines from his mother telling him what to do: find him, bind him, tie him to a pole and break his fingers to splinters, throw him in a hole, and so on and so forth. I don't have the lyrics in front of me, but the melody of that is reprised at the very end when he's caught the guy finally, and so in the last words of the song, he's like, so lean in close and I'll whisper the last words you'll hear. And then instead of the lyrics again for the chorus, it's just the melody, which is like do 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 do, and then it like picks up like with all the instruments, and it's so great because I can almost imagine that song being played out in a theater, which ties the whole album together because they have on the cover the visual of a stage with who I assume is Eli the Barrow Boy, because he's got like some sort of like wheelbarrow with a bunch of turnips or whatnot in his cart. Yeah, it's a great album. There's nothing wrong with it. I think the weakest song in it is the Sporting Life, which is even a great track. Like it has its definite place in there. The one song that is the most out of place of the album is 16 Military Wives. It's like some sort of like political song, but it's a good song. It just doesn't really fit with the rest of the tracks for some reason, but I'm totally okay with it because it's a great song. And it's one of those, like, I guess, favorite songs. Like if a fan or if a non-fan listened to it, that would probably be their favorite track, without having to go really in depth because it's pretty accessible. But as a whole, the album, completely great, fantastic, love it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'll just admit this one's not on my list, so I want to just talk about it a little bit longer since I also love this album. You introduced me to it. Actually, well, I'd always heard of the Decemberists, but I never actually listened to them until you kind of recommended them. And
right.
I bought this album when I was in Boston years ago. I found it at a little local record shop, and yeah, I love it. I'm not usually a big lyrics guy, but Colin Meloy, that guy can tell a story like you're saying, like nobody's business. It's and that and just like the way the melodies work with the lyrics. Like one of my favorite songs on there is On the Bus Mall.
Yeah.
It's dark, very, very dark, but it's beautiful.
Lachrymose.
Very lachrymose. But the melody in that is just amazing. Like that chorus gets just lodged in there, And The Sporting Life, I love that one. That's just a fun one. It has a very much like Morrissey, like the Smiths vibe. Like, yeah. The rhythm of that and just like the whole song reminds me very much of This Charming Man for some reason.
Yeah. Well, it's got that like classic like beat is like dun 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 dun, like playing like the whole time, which is really great. And it's throughout except for the doom doom doom. Kind of like goes up for the pre-chorus, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of showcases Colin Malloy's sense of humor a little bit too, because like the lyrics are a bummer because it's about a guy who's just not very good at anything in his life, and he's lying there on the field falling down while the team captain is flirting with his girlfriend basically, but it's funny, in that way, and I love it.
Kind of reminds me of myself if I were to go out for sports, because that's how successful I would have been. But I knew what I was good at, and I stuck with it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
which was not very much.
Heyo. That's very good album.
And the Bagman's Gambit, great song, long song.
Oh man,
great song. Showcases his complex songwriting ability. Not only in the lyrics, but the melody and the instrument play is really, really fantastic. They do a lot of just really interesting things with all of the instruments and unconventional, I didn't even consider that could, be a possibility type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, good song.
Yeah. Another, I have a memory of that album, and I remember you and I were with some friends out hanging out at a cabin on a vacation, and you and I were in the living room. It was in the evening, and you had your acoustic guitar, and you played Eli the Barrow Boy, and basically serenaded me while your wife was in the other room. And good thing she's not the jealous type. But I remember that was just a lot of fun. I like in my memory, I was like humming a harmony, like I was contributing, but I don't think I was. I think you were just singing to me pretty much. So.
I'm glad you weren't humming, because you probably would have thrown me off.
It's true, because I'm not really a musician, so I probably would have done it poorly. So it's probably for the best. So
yeah,
but yeah, good memory.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, what do you got for your next in line alphabetical order? Number 3, we'll call it.
Number 3. Okay, so you might bristle at this for reasons you'll know immediately, but
oh my god,
no. Probably not what you're thinking then.
Okay.
Clutch's Blast Tyrant.
Okay.
At
least it's not Woods of Ypres.
No, not Woods of Ypres. I like them. Nowhere near the top 5 at all. Yeah.
So was buried.
That's a good song.
Anybody want to check out Woods of Ypres, you can go ahead and listen to that song. Laugh for 5 minutes.
Well, sadly, that's one of the better songs, but I'm not selling it very well. But I'm not here to sell that.
Sounds like if Eeyore was like a metal front man.
Okay, you do realize that you are hamming it up a lot. It's not that deep, and it's not that slow.
No, not a lot. Only a little bit.
Okay, fine. I admit, I think he's a pretty good songwriter in terms of like the music, and he has a good. I like his voice, and I like his both harsh and clean vocals. But his lyrics are where you have to ignore them because they're not very good.
This is Clutch. We're talking about Clutch now.
Funny.
No,
very funny.
Have to.
No, that's Woods of Ypres, but we'll get back here. We'll get back on track.
Back on track. Enough about Woods of Ypres.
So Clutch, Blast Tyrant, it was their I could start Clutch. They're, I want to say they're from Virginia, somewhere like East Coast, Southern East Coast, and so they fall into that kind of Southern fried blues, metal, rock, hard rock category. This album has a good amount of funk in it too. It was their 6th album, came out in 2004, and I've been listening to these guys the least of anybody on my list. I've only known them for a few years, but I've listened to them quite a bit, and this album just is head and shoulders better than everything else. It's just like, again, they kind of hit their peak. I think 2004 was just a good year for metal and rock, according to my list anyway. But yeah, it's relatively simple, kind of chunky blues riffs in that. But Neil Fallon, their vocalist, he's a really talented vocalist, does a lot of cool kind of vocal gymnastics. He's a good lyricist too. I don't listen to the lyrics that closely, but a handful of songs where I will listen, he's a good lyricist. And it's just like good music for when you want to have a good time. Because even when it's kind of darker lyrics, it's still just kind of fun, just like really groovy music. And it's just a lot of fun to listen to. I remember I had a lot of memories of on Thursday nights I used to go to Big Time Brewery in the U District, and I'd have a few beers, and I'd be a little buzzed because I didn't have any dinner. and I was just in this really good mood when I left, and so I put Blast Tyrant on and just like jam the whole walk home. It was so much fun. I probably looked like a lunatic, like half dancing down the street, but
You didn't look half as crazy as the guy swirling his stick around on the corner of the Neptune Theater.
that is a whole other story, but that is exactly correct. As long as I'm under that in terms of kind of crazy eccentricity, I'm okay. So
How many spins did you do on your walk home, like listening to them?
listen to that. I did one less than that guy, whatever that number was.
That's good. That's good.
But
Yeah, I unfortunately have nothing to say about Clutch, like except for, is this the album that has telekinetic prophetic?
no, that's Psychic Warfare. That's several albums later. This one I don't think you've heard. There's a ballad on it called "The Regulator," about a guy who he basically is telling a story about how his wife is sleeping with another man because he has more money and he's just all around just like a more successful guy. And our protagonist
is it Kid Rock?
It
His
should
wife's
be
sleeping with.
should be. The guy deserves nothing but the best. I mean, he did do that one song that was basically just like where he sampled.
Wait. Are you about to throw down a compliment to Kid Rock?
No, I'm gonna slam him because he.
Okay.
Well,
good.
it was gonna be a backhanded kind of slam because he did that song that was really catchy, but it was basically just he sampled "Sweet Home Alabama" by Leonard Skinner, and he just like threw his own like lyrics in and music in the verses, and then the chorus was just "Sweet Home Alabama." It was like the biggest ripoff, and then the music video was him just partying with a bunch of women on a boat or something. It was
Wonderful.
ridiculous, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, anyway, so The Regulator, it's about a guy who is basically saying how as he's walking to the man's house to kill him, he's just like hoping that it's actually at his wife's house, and he's hoping like please tell me you've like gotten a dog to guard the house and change the locks, because that's the only way I'm not going to kill this guy is if I can't get in.
Oh my God.
And so the chorus keeps circling back to him basically walking to death row. He's talking about walking the longest mile, which is that walk to your death, essentially. So he has some pretty cool stories he tells, and but all in all, though, in general, just the music, it's just fun music, but that's simple but interesting, which is a hard line to walk, I think. So,
All right.
yeah.
Cool. All right.
Number 3 is for you now? Is that where we're at?
Number three.
Mm-hmm.
All right, my number 3. We'll wait for you to finish your swig so you don't spit all over the place in surprise.
Spit take? Yeah. Okay.
Just kidding. It's not that surprising. It is Ramona Falls Intuit.
Okay.
So, we did talk about Ramona Falls a little bit ago when we mentioned Menomena. So, Ramona Falls is the side project of Brent Knopf. Knopf. Please write in if you know how to actually pronounce his name.
I'm pretty sure when you have a Knopf like that, you pronounce the P and F. I'm pretty sure it's
But what
Knopf.
about the K, though? I assume no K, because it is KN, like a knife.
Is that German? Because if it's German, you would pronounce it. Knopf.
He looks like he could be an Aryan.
That narrows it down.
He's very white.
Okay. Does he have like a ruddy complexion like me?
No, his nose looks like yours, though. It's a very Roman nose, you know.
Very aquiline and majestic.
Yeah.
You know, this really goes over well on
That's
a podcast.
not what I would say, but
You know? All these images people are seeing of us right now.
So yeah, Intuit. This is his first album that he created as Ramona Falls, and it's perfect. It's a perfect album. It has perfect composition, great song choices that ebb and flow from really energetic, a lot of guitars, a lot of I won't say wall of soundy, but they really kind of build on top of each other. More layers keep on getting added into different songs, like Going Once, Going Twice, one of the best songs on the album. And then he has a bunch of like softer songs that he'll play, like Darkest Day, Belly Fola, or Russia. Those tracks are all kind of really sullen, like a lot of like guitar or acoustic guitar, very minimalist for the most part in those songs. And they all seem to be a little bit more, optimistic or like beautiful sounding, like almost, I won't say apologetic, but they're very, they're not really melancholic, and until you get to Always Right. This is a good track because it has it's just complete chaos. It'll have these really high pitched vocals in the background going like it sounds like a whole bunch of demons or imps are running around la 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 la. It sounds like those three characters in The Nightmare Before Christmas that kidnap Santa Claus. It's kind of creepy almost. And this is very it's almost a very in your face kind of sound. Almost feels like, wow, Brent, you got angry for a second. You were so happy in these rest of these songs, they were really beautiful. And then this one is just he's like, this is the way it is. And I am right. This is how it is. It's very, but it fits, it's a great position in the album. It's track 8. So it comes in kind of later, and it's this nice little jalapeno in the center of what is this great burrito,
Very good. Excuse me. I like Ramona Falls. I've heard some of their stuff. I remember back when we used to work together, when we'd play music at work over the PA system.
Right.
We'd have our mixed, playlist going, and whenever a Menomena or Ramona Falls song came on, you always made me guess which band it was. I almost always guessed wrong, but I always enjoyed it. And I remember Ramona Falls. I think I do like Brent's voice a lot. I think he was my favorite of the vocalists, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So I remember enjoying what I heard from them.
Yeah, I definitely think he's more talented musician than the other two. It really showed after he'd left, because Menomena came out with another album after Mines called Moms, and it was just the two of them, and it was much weaker. There were 2 good songs, and that was pretty much it. The rest of them kind of fell flat because they didn't have that nice influence or contribution that Brent was able to provide. And it's a shame, but I do like what Brent's doing with Ramona Falls. So, yeah.
Okay. Since we're talking about Ramona Falls, Menomena, and that, I just remember, correct me if I'm wrong, but their debut album was called I Am the Fun Blame Monster, which is an anagram of Menomena's first album.
No, it's an anagram for the first Menomena album.
Oh, okay. That to me, the fact that they could create that though, with those set of letters, that's really impressive to me.
Yeah, they also have the best album artwork ever. The I Am the Fun Blame Monster is actually this big flip book with a little sleeve for the CD in the back, and it's it's 4 images, and one of each of them, and then a 4th image, I want to say, and they're just, it almost looks like they're in a photo booth or something. Super weird. And then their second album, Muscle and Flow, won an award for best album jewel case art packet. I can't remember what the actual thing was, but they had little holes around in the booklet that you could see onto the CD itself, and there were little images on the CD, so you could turn the CD much like a decoder pen, and rearrange it to change how the picture looked. It was really nice.
Okay.
It's very, very clever how they did that. But yeah, those guys are very creative, very clever.
Very cool. Right on.
Hello, podcast fans. Sorry for the interruption. This is Erik, and I felt the need to actually have a little disclaimer here, because upon editing this episode, I realized that I was giving the incorrect title for that Menomena album. It is not Muscle and Flow. That is indeed actually the first track of that album, and the title of the album is actually Friend or Foe. Sorry about that, and we will continue along with the episode. All right. Number 2, what do you got?
Number 2, okay. So this is Kalmah, the Black Waltz.
Yeah. See, I only said Seventh Symphony because that was the one I'm most familiar with.
Yeah, and I know you like Deadfall a lot.
I like Dead Fool an appropriate amount. All right, let's
Appropriate.
not say a lot.
A lot compared to their other stuff, though, perhaps. No. But yes.
Yeah.
Um,
I will concede that.
yeah. Anyway, the Black Waltz, that was their fourth album, came out in 2006. This was kind of a pivotal time for the band because they released their first three albums, which all sound fairly similar, and they're excellent. But it was a very different sound, and then for reasons I can't remember and don't really care about too much because I care more about the music, they almost disbanded after that third album. But then they somehow patched things up, figured out what they wanted to do, and then they recorded this fourth album, and it was a kind of a stylistic shift. So you still had elements of their previous work, but they started incorporating more thrash into their music. I should also probably say what type of metal they are first. They are a melodic death metal band from Finland, and Finland is known for melodic death metal. Well done. Well known for incorporating a lot of keyboards into their death metal. And this new album is no exception, but instead of just the standard kind of melodic death metal guitars and drums, they worked more thrash in, which, as thrash as a genre doesn't do a lot for me just by itself, but when it's the way they work it in with their death metal and with their melodies, it sets them apart from everybody else. Nobody else sounds like them in my book. And it's the music is very aggressive and punchy, but there's strong melodies. Their drummer's fantastic. He does a lot of crazy footwork and cymbal work and that. The vocals on this album are less varied because they went from a higher pitch sound in the early work to this album was all like much lower death growls, and later on they kind of combined and did both. And I like the fact that they did both later on, but the music just kind of wasn't as strong later on. But let's see. Yeah, and just in general, melodic death metal is a very kind of oversaturated subgenre of metal in the metal community because it's something that is a good gateway for people who want to get into more aggressive music because it is super melodic. So it's something that's not too objectionable to a lot of people if they could look past the harsh vocals and the blast beats and that. But so many bands sound the same. And it's just the same types of riffs, same melodies, and it's so boring. And these guys have always been different, and that's what I like. And they're just less kind of morose too, because too many of these bands are just overly depressing with their lyrics. And I'm all for like listening to a depressing song, that's cool. But when it's just that melodramatic, like 8th grade diary type of drama of just vague despair, I just check out. I can't even be like around that. And so these guys are just.
Park.
Yeah, well, that or just even other melodic death metal I've heard that's
of course, yeah.
Just like the overall tone, it just doesn't do it for me as much anymore. And these guys are fun because they're hunters, they're fishermen. They sing about like hooking a big fish or just various other weird topics of just in their lives, and so it's just a little different. So yeah, big fan.
Nice, yeah. Well, that means you don't have Death Cab on your list since you went all the way to K. Oh wait, Clutch is with a K, isn't it?
No, it's with a C.
Oh wait, is it?
Oh. It's just like a regular Clutch. Yeah.
Oh. It's not like a backwards K, or
just. Now you're just trying to press my buttons, but yeah, CLUTCH.
I don't think I'm trying. I think I am succeeding in pressing your buttons.
You've been doing that well for how long have I known you? I want to say like 7 or 8 years now, something like that. 8 years.
A fact I'm very proud of.
That makes one of us. So
has anybody else been pressing your buttons for longer? I don't think so.
Ethan has.
Raining. God damn it, Ethan.
Well,
I'm coming for you next.
Well, I've known him since college, so he kind of wins just because I've known him longer.
Okay. Fine. I guess you got a new best friend. That's fine. Yeah. Why don't you go do a podcast with him, you asshole?
Right. No, he wouldn't want to do this. The whole thing, it wouldn't be the same podcast. It'd be a podcast of the two of us just making fun of each other the entire time. And then we'd be these depressed, sad individuals at the end of every episode.
I think it would almost be like an hour-long, like, grunting Tim Allen, like... Hey.
What are you saying? We're cavemen?
You said it. I didn't.
When you're right, you're right.
Okay. Ready for my number 2?
Number 2.
All right. I have Richard Dawson, Peasant. That is my number 2. You called it.
Okay.
Number 2. I have not been listening to this album for very long either. Probably the last couple years. But it is wonderful. However, he is the most acquired taste music I've ever heard. I don't think that anybody has ever liked this album on the first listen.
Correct.
And the fact that I gave it a second listen was a little amazing. But I did hear a few things that I enjoyed the first couple times around, or first time around rather. Let's basically describe what Richard Dawson is like. It's like he fell out of a Renaissance fair with a bunch of with one guitar that has really loose strings, and there's just a bunch of bones and old drums around him. But god damn it, he knows how to make that work. It is he's a magician. His vocal style is pretty jarring. It's very off the beaten path. It's very primal, very gnarly, I want to say. But he's a really good vocalist. He hits his notes, but they are just a little rough. This is so hard to describe. Let me go into the album rather. So Peasant is a concept album, much like the Canterbury Tales, where it's about this village back in who knows what year it is. I think the 1200s or something like that. And it's about this village, people living in there, and each song is an illustration of some of the villagers. There's Harold is the first track. There's the ogre. There is the weaver. There's a whole bunch of the scientist, Hob. There's a whole bunch of different people who live in this village, and they're each showcased in each one of these songs. And it's just so well put together. It is such a surprise after you've gotten it and it clicked, and it's like coffee. Nobody liked coffee the first time they tried it. You've ever sipped or beer even. I didn't like beer when I first tried it when I was a young drinker or drinkest, and now it's my favorite beverage. It's. I urge people to just give it a chance, and then give it a second chance, and maybe a third chance. And after the third chance, if you do not like it still, then that's totally fine. But that's how many chances it is required to see his genius, because there's so many. There's layers of onion until you get to the nice chocolate morsel in the inside. It's so worth it.
Wait, sorry. Onion covered chocolate? Is that what you just described?
Yes. And while the onion might have been challenging to get through, it's worth it, and it's nutritious. It's good for you.
I'm sorry I interrupted. I just had to point that out. That was great.
I would be upset if you didn't.
This album I remember you urged me to listen to it, and I didn't give it a fair shot because I didn't give it my undivided attention, so I think I need to give it another try, and actually listen more closely. Because I do remember there were a handful of songs.
Here's actually, sorry, before you go into this thing, here's how I listened to it the first time. I was a captive audience on an airplane, and they didn't have a screen in front of me. So there was really nothing else I could do other than I was well, let's try this out. So I actively listened to it while we sat on the tarmac for 40 minutes. And yeah. Then I gave it a shot. I listened to it again and again and again and again. I probably listened to it about 40, 50 times.
Wow.
Not just then, but in my life.
But that's still impressive. I mean, given that you said you've only been listening for a couple years now, that's a lot
Yeah.
of listens in even a couple years.
Well, I kept coming back to it. It offered so much more, and I still get new things out of it. Like my favorite song on the album has shifted so many different times. Like it's like I'm going deeper and deeper each level. Like every time I like a new song because of this reason, I was like, wow, this one was kind of jarring at first, but now I'm starting to get it. Like it makes sense. Like I understand the mysteries of the universe. Like
That is an interesting thing you're kind of bringing up. Just more generally speaking about that is how rewarding it can be to finally have an album click. You know, where like you listen and listen, you like it, like it's you know there's something there you like, and you listen, but then it finally all of a sudden it registers like why you like it maybe, and like there's just a way you have to like a different perspective you have to take on it. It happened to me years ago. I was listening to a Pelican album, an instrumental post metal album, and it just finally clicked, and it's a really cool experience.
yeah, it's almost rewarding that
Oh
like
yeah,
you put in the work, right? And then you reap the rewards after that. You're like, wow, this was work to get to, but I'm so glad that I put that effort in because now it's so fulfilling and enriching, and I feel like a better person for having appreciated it. You know?
exactly. It's almost like you're helping the artist make a better product in your eyes in a weird
Yes,
way.
yes. And Richard Dawson came out with a new album just this last fall called 2020, which is almost like the same idea as Peasant, just in a modern day stance. It's almost like a second like look at that sort of thing. He's got this really great track called Fulfillment Center, and it's about people working in an Amazon fulfillment center and how they have to step over the collapsed guy to make their quota. He has an absurd amount of humor in his newest album, and it is delicious, especially if you work in any sort of customer service job ever. And you can really, really appreciate the subject matter in it. It's very great. But yeah, my wife despises Richard Dawson, and she does not allow Richard Dawson to be played in her presence. Sometimes it'll like come on in like a playlist that we have, and she won't notice it at first, but then there'll be that one line where he's just like and you like really go off onto it, and then she'll look up and realize what's happening and be like, what the hell, turn this off right now.
Oh, that's funny. I mean, I'd be tempted to ask you to turn it off as well, but again, that's after one listen, so
Right.
yeah.
Well, I implore you, try again. It's
All right.
You know me. I've got adequate taste in music, palatable taste in music, and I put that album as my number 2 album of all time.
Yeah, I didn't think it was gonna be that high on your. I mean, I didn't rank my guesses for you, but I would have guessed that was how far up it would be, given how the recency of the acquisition and whatnot. So
It's that high because it's a cohesive album that works really, really well together. It's very, like, I could tell he put a lot of thought into the whole composition of it and every single song, and it just fits so well together. It's just a great concept album that really fits together as an album, and it should be digested as a whole album, not like cherry-picked songs thrown into a playlist, even though I kind of do that sometimes, but that's the proper way to digest the whole album, or the album is to listen to its entirety.
that's fair.
Yeah.
Very fair.
All right. Number 1, here we go. Last one.
Number 1, but last alphabetically, or anyway. Not necessarily.
I don't know what you were thinking.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't thinking. There's a problem because I realized by saying it was in alphabetical order, it was giving away what it couldn't be, like you said, for Death Cab and whatnot. I will say that. Oh, actually, this could be kind of fun. This is on the fly. Might be fun. Do you want to do honorable mentions, like you oftentimes have, sometimes before like kind of like a final. Not that this is like a number one for me, but like, yeah, you see that in lists all the time. So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
let's see.
I was kind of hoping that we'd be able to do that.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, now I need to come up with some honorable mentions. Oh yeah. Well, I have at least a couple. One that I was considering was Porcupine Tree's Deadwing. Um, I've only really started listening to Porcupine Tree in the last 2 or 3 years, probably. Porcupine Tree, they're a British kind of prog rock, prog metal band. Main songwriter, guitarist, vocalist, Stephen Wilson. He's really prolific in the progressive community. He does a lot of production for bands like Opeth and just other prog rock artists and whatnot. And he has some other pretty high profile musicians in his band too. Or well, he did. They're no longer a band, but Deadwing was kind of, I believe it was the second album after they switched to more of a metal sound. Because before In Absentia, which I know you're fond of, because I know you've heard a handful of songs off that, and you've enjoyed at least what I've played for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a lot more like synthy kind of pop, not pop rock per se, but it was a lot lighter, kind of airy, ethereal kind of rock music. But when they switched to more of a metal sound, I think the scope kind of broadened a bit, and Deadwing was just like, to me, like the pinnacle of that. Some just absolutely incredible songs on it. But it feels too recent. Part of my criteria, I think, for choosing these albums where I had to have listened to them for at least a few years. Clutch I discovered maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Everything else has been quite a bit older. So Porcupine Tree, I just didn't quite make it. But the other one I was considering was Bandmaid's newest album, Conqueror. I know I've shared them with you before. Five women, Japanese rock band, and they dress like French maids.
Right.
Sounds gimmicky, but they write their own music, and they're really good songwriters, and they have marketing, image, they have everything behind them. They're super cute. It's all great. But that album's been out since beginning of December, so I can't say that it's an all-time favorite because it just hasn't. I haven't been sitting with it long enough. It just wouldn't be fair to everybody else. That and also just I was kind of thinking about them as a band, and I think I like them as they would probably make like a top 10 list of favorite bands of all time, but not one of their albums like top favorite albums of all time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like their overall vibe and like their music in general, but not one album in particular. So
yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, those were a couple honorable mentions. Do you want to say your honorable mentions, or should I now say my last one?
Why don't you go say your last
Okay.
one, and then I'll do my honorable mentions real quick, and then I'll do my last one.
Cool. Okay. So my final one is Wuthering Heights, The Shadow Cabinet.
Ooh.
They're a band I discovered not long after Angra, actually, back in college, from the aforementioned roommate. They're a Danish kind of power metal band, but not. They're more like heavy metal with a very strong progressive folk influence.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you took like the Mariner's Revenge song from the Decemberists and like made it more like a metal song, like overall tone and like lyrical content, you kind of have like a Wuthering Heights vibe, sort of.
Right. I remember the Mad Sailor, right? Is that the name
Yep.
of the track?
Exactly, the Mad Sailor. That was from.
That's the only one I'm familiar with, but it's quite good.
It's good. It's not on this album. It's on the one.
God damn it!
You tried.
Clutch,
It's okay.
first Clutch, and then Wuthering Heights. God.
That's okay.
All right.
I mean that the album after Salt, which has the Mad Sailor, it also has a song called Lost at Sea, which is like the big epic kind of like Mariner's Revenge song, and it has that kind of like sea shanty vibe of a sailor or basically a captain at sea going mad essentially. And but anyway, previous album is The Shadow Cabinet, which is the one I'm choosing. It's their fourth album. Came out in 2006. Their first two albums I really haven't listened to because I can't stand the vocalist. He's just awful. He's just generic and weak sounding, and their music is so strong you can't have a weak vocalist behind that or in front of that, I guess. So their third album was where I really started getting into them, and that's an excellent album as well. Far from the Madding Crowd. No relation to the Thomas Hardy novel, and their name is no relation to the Emily Bronte novel either. They just love lyrical like references to literature and whatnot. But
They
Far from the
probably
Madding
haven't
Crowd.
even read it.
Yeah, exactly. Far from the Madding Crowd
As
is more
Lay
like
Dying did the same thing. It's a William Faulkner novel.
Oh, they did. Yeah, that's right. Interesting. But yeah, Fourth and Manic Crowd, their third, that was all like Tolkien, like hobbits and elves and all that stuff. And it's good music, but the lyrics I don't care about. But the Shadow Cabinet was really cool. Had a lot of good folk influences in it. A lot of using the fiddle a lot and stuff like that, and a lot of just folk melodies played on the electric guitar and that.
What is the Shadow Cabinet to you? What is a Shadow Cabinet?
Well, a Shadow Cabinet, I think, is
like some sort of like the Indian in the cupboard type of thing. Like...
My understanding of a Shadow Cabinet was because my mom and dad actually made one years ago in honor of her parents. Actually, it was actually really cool. They might still have it. I hope so. It's basically like a picture frame with depth. So you can, instead of just having flat photos of the person, you also can put memorabilia that's related to them.
Oh, okay.
So, like for example, it had both my mom's parents served in the military, and so they had portraits of them, and then all like their medals and like other cool stuff. And so, I think in this case, it's designed to be more of just like a shadow cabinet. Kind of represents just like a repository for all like the various emotions and like all the things about the human condition, because that's kind of what the lyrics are about. Each song's about a different, not a sin necessarily, but just a thing that we have to contend with in daily life.
Right.
Songs about envy, about faith, about vanity, things like that. And this is one of those albums where I do listen to the lyrics because one, their vocalist is amazing, and their lyricist and main songwriter, whose name is Erik with a K, so you know he's a good guy.
I allow it.
His lyrics are just absolutely amazing. One of my favorites is from a song called "Beautiful," and it's basically about a song from the perspective of a man who's not particularly attractive or successful, and he's singing about all the people in the world who are blessed with beauty, like superficial beauty, but with no substance, yet they still get all the advantages in life, essentially.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, his substance, like when the lights are off, his substance is what's going to carry him forward when that person has none, basically. But one of the lyrics, one of my favorites is, how's it go? He's singing, the preachers of perfection tell us to be like you before it's too late, but they can't see the light within us through their designer shades, which just had some just really good imagery and that I really appreciated and whatnot. But yeah, their music, it doesn't sound like Angra, but it has a lot of the same characteristics in the sense that it's very technical, but it's very a lot of good melody. It's accessible enough, and yeah, it's just a lot of fun. And they're also one of those bands I think that has a little bit of appeal just because they don't release a lot of music and they're kind of quiet. So it's more just like wanting to know what's going on, like what are they up to? Are they writing anything? What's happening? I gotta know, And so it kind of sucks you in a little bit. Their lack of marketing sucks you in, which doesn't make any sense, but it's kind of the way it goes.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. So how about you? You've got some honorable mentions and a final, your number one, which I now think I probably guessed wrong. So.
All right. So. My honorable mentions, I'm just going to list off a couple. I was thinking about like Pink Floyd's The Wall is really good. The Beatles' The White Album, like those like classic Boston, the self-titled, initial album. I was all thinking about, but I didn't really decide to go any classic rock route. I was thinking about Ockerville River, Black Sheep Boy. It's very well constructed album by Ockerville River, one of my favorite bands. I was thinking about Neutral Milk Hotel, but this is one of those like things, the In the Airplane Over the Sea. I was thinking, nope, this is more of like an important staple in music history, and I need to move off. It's not actually something that I listen to quite often enough for be like, oh, I need to like I do like to listen to it, but it's not one of those like top tier ones. Death Cab, Narrow Stairs, honorable mention, did not get on the list, unfortunately for you, loser. I was also thinking about the Antlers Hospice, which is a very, 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 very sad concept album that deals with death, cancer, mortality. Very rough album. You cannot listen to that one twice in a year. It is a very like, yeah, you put that down for a few years before you're ready to listen to it again. But what brilliant songwriting. Super, super sad though. Way too sad to listen to over and over again.
I was trying to. Sorry to interrupt. I was trying to think of that album when I was making the list for you, actually, because I remember you talking that one up. I just could not remember the band.
It was the third album that I wrote down on my pad of paper, but ultimately didn't make the cut just because of the infrequently that I am able to listen to it, because it is too sad. I was once listening to it on a car ride home, and I was like, I need to pull over for this to like wipe the tears from my eyes because this is ridiculous. And this is okay. So this one right here, Low Roar. The album title is Zero, the numeral 0. That is the one that I originally had at number 5 and was kicked off by Menomena Minds. It's a great album. It's the perfect Saturday morning while you're making breakfast album. It is calming, relaxing, but not boring at the same time. Like it there's so much finesse going on in the songs, and they're just really calm and relaxing, and they're non-threatening. Like anybody could listen to this and like have it on in the background, but real, music junkies like you or I could really appreciate the complexity of each track. He's a phenomenal. It's like one dude who's basically the band, but his name is Low Roar. Very, very good. He's most recently featured in the Death Stranding video game, which I just played. He has a whole bunch of songs on that game, and one of his songs was featured on the first trailer for that game many years ago. But my number 1 is, do you know what it is?
Well, I'm going to guess at this point, if given we're at the position.
You guessed it.
I did guess it? Oh, wow.
You did.
Okay. Well, brand new's Deja Entendu.
It is brand new's Deja Entendu from 2003, my 8th grade graduating year. Let me tell you, this album is, I know it's great because of I've been listening to it for 17 years, and it is still good. It came out during that whole, like, when emo was on the rise, and it admittedly is quite an emo album, but it is the best emo album that there ever is. Like, it's so good. It's their second album, and this was when they departed from that whole punk rock vibe. Like, they were really, really punk rock right before this album, and then this one is an era defining album that kind of changed the course of what like that pop punk like rock vibe was, and they kind of set the standard for this, and Brand New is still creating great albums, like, and admittedly a lot of them are like better than the last one. They took 8 years to come out with an album in between Daisy and then their most recent one, Science Fiction. But Deja Entendu still holds firm as my number 1 favorite. Like the whole kit and caboodle is just really great. They have so many different clever lyrics that I like. They're very like just almost cringy, but like they pull it off so well. They're just not apologetic about that. Like they really like own those lyrics. Like what some of the lyrics are like, if looks could really kill, then my profession would be staring.
Okay.
they're very like crunchy, like, but I really like them, and they were so good then that I am so I allow them to still be good now, like in my head. Like there's just, it's a big nostalgia thing too. Like not everybody is going to like this if they pick it up right now, but like since I had the context of listening to it back then in 2003 and on, then like, I don't know. It just holds a really special place in my heart, and nothing will ever fill that place,
Yeah. You can't put a price on that, so that makes complete sense.
Do you know of any music that you still enjoy and you'll still stand behind that you listened to in 2003?
2003? What was 2003?
So Power Man 5000?
That was later. That was like a couple of years later. I mean,
Okay.
honestly, 2003 would have been. You said that was your 8th grade graduating year?
It was, yeah. So it must have been your freshman year.
Oh, that might have been Power Man 5000 era. Oh boy. Because I remember there was this weird time early in high school when I was between Smash Mouth and metalcore. It was like this weird no man's land of like hard rock, alt rock, and Power Man 5000 filled a chunk of that. That honestly was probably a very good guess on your part. That was probably what I would have been listening to then. I don't think I'd still stand behind that though, to be honest, because their music
Yeah.
is pretty garbagey.
I think it's really rare for someone to have picked up something that early and it still be like holding up. I'm 31 years old now, and I still enjoy listening to that mix. They have a great ebb and flow, like songs go up and down, like they're really aggressive, and then they have a really slow one. They've really clever, like I wouldn't necessarily call it wordplay, but they're very clever about their lyrics. And I don't know, it's a great cohesive album that really jump started me enjoying this type of music. It's really great.
Yeah, very good.
All right,
Well,
that's
good
it.
list, man.
Those are
Good.
top five.
Yeah. Before we kind of move on, I wouldn't mind circling back to kind of the criteria we use to make our choices. Because we talked a little bit about it at the start, but that to me is what's interesting. Because this whole, when you propose this idea of top 5 favorite albums, I jumped on board right away because I love music, and I also am a very organized, left-brained kind of person. So organizing things and it's fun. But I spent far longer than I ever thought I would trying to come up with this list. Like I was thinking about it up until yesterday, pretty much, from when you suggested it, however long ago it was, on a daily basis, regularly thinking and listening to those albums over and over and like trying to decide and stuff, because it's not like I have to hold to this, but I wanted to be as accurate as I could,
Yeah, exactly. And I am in no way, like I have no reservations about like we're gonna definitely change our minds about this list, like maybe even like next month, next year, or something like that. Like this is how we view it in the moment right now, like all-time favorite list right now. It'd
Exactly.
be nice actually, maybe a stay tuned like future episode where we will re-examine our lists and see if anything has changed or if anything new comes out that actually like really, vibes with us or something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was one of those things where I needed to make sure that it wasn't like a flavor of the week type of thing.
Yes.
Because I've been really getting into a lot more of the extreme metal genres lately, and my list does not suggest that at all. The only extreme bands on there, well, it's Kalmah, really, because Agalloch is hardly an extreme metal band, and the rest are all like power metal or like rock. I've been a lot more into like old school death metal, like straight black metal, all that kind of stuff lately. But it's all, again, it's recent. It's stuff I'm into now. It's not necessarily something that's gonna last. I don't know. I want to make the choices today feel like the ones that I feel are timeless, that I can still pick up now and be like, wow, that's still really good. And that's kind of, I feel like that list kind of did that for me. What about you? What's your take?
Yeah, I feel like we both kind of went the same route. I definitely did not take as long as you. I wrote this. I have this like pad of paper list. I wrote this down in 5 minutes, and then I put numbers down. And other than the one change of number 5 getting booted, that was pretty much it. Like
Okay.
I kind of knew what it was going to be like, going into it, which is kind of like, I don't know, it makes sense because I'm the one who kind of proposed the idea of us doing the top 5 albums, so I kind of had it in my head already, just for a little bit, you know. But yeah, I had a lot of fun doing this, and I had a lot of fun talking about it as well. And I hope our listeners appreciated it. Hope you take the moment to listen to any of these albums that we've recommended to you guys.
Yeah, they're definitely worth your time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, thanks for listening, everybody. We've been Subtitles On. My name is Erik, and I'm here with my buddy Ryan. And until next time.
All right. See you guys later.
Bye-bye. That was good.
Yeah, that was good.